Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 274. My name is Benjamin Yoder. I'm here today to talk to you about video games. Got a pretty lengthy list of notes here this week, although that doesn't necessarily mean it will end up being a long show. You know, sometimes I talk about things for like 2 seconds. Other times we get stuck on it for like 10 minutes. So, but we'll be talking about Psychic Force Puzzle Taisen this week, as well as some Tokyo Game Show stuff, potential things to be looking at there. A couple of new games. Yeah, a couple of new games. New localization, some old games. Good mix of stuff. Good, pretty much across the board. No Buddy Mission Bond news, though, unfortunately. So, although I think they're still posting updates about their new event. I have not really been tracking to see what's going on, but that's happening sometime this month. That's soon. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get a Blu-ray release as well. But yeah, this week I played through pretty much the remainder of Psychic Force Puzzle Taisen. I know I talked about this last week, although I really don't know how much more I have to say about it. But Psychic Force Puzzle Taisen is really, a puzzle bobble game. It is literally Puzzle Bobble, like it's Taito themselves who made this, but it basically has a Psychic Force skin. So Psychic Force being this old PlayStation, and I think a Dreamcast fighting game as well. Yeah, so it's just that, but like with the cute chibi characters from the fighting game and stuff like that. And I assume, remixed music and things like that. I don't know Psychic Force really at all. This is literally, in some ways, the very first Psychic Force game I've been playing. I think I touched Psychic Force briefly in the past, but for I'm putting this disc in to see what it's like kind of thing. Not a like I'm playing through the entirety of Psychic Force's arcade mode or something like that. So anyways, but I played through it, and yeah, I mean, something I talked about a little bit about last week was like, I don't know how much strategy there is to a game like Puzzle Bobble. I'm sure there is, right? But it really seemed to be based off what I talked about with people and then also looking at videos online, that largely it's just kind of like, hey, try to get a line that you can break, and so you can like drop, essentially there's like you can set up a line of colored orbs, and then if you break that, it will basically cause everything, below it to fall down. But if there's even one orb that's connecting like the rest of it, then it will basically, keep that entire piece from falling until that one orb is broken. And so you have, I don't know how many colors, maybe like 5 to 6 colors. So it gets really difficult to actually set those things up. And then if you're doing like in the story mode of this game, there's a competitive mode. So the other players like junk flies up on your screen and stuff like that. So, but I was trying to look up like strategies and stuff for this, and I really didn't find anything other than just be like, hey, react fast, and then if you find like a spot that you have like a bunch of like one color sitting, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to build on it and then break it, just go ahead and throw a bunch of junk below it and then break it so it falls down and you send a bunch of junk to the other player's screen. Again, you really got to be careful though, because like one set of junk that the player sends to you can cover up that entire section and really ruin your life, especially if you've built up like this big hanging, grouping of orbs, and then the junk flies up and blocks off your ability to break them off. Then it's pretty easy to die from there. I feel like it's a very like high risk, high reward game. I say as somebody who's not, particularly knowledgeable of puzzle games. But yeah, it seems pretty straightforward, or simple and straightforward. And I get the impression this version of the game probably does not offer that much more over other versions of Psychic Puzzle Bobble. I mean, I don't know. This is the first Puzzle Bobble I've played in its entirety, but it's pretty straightforward. You have 3 modes versus. You have the story mode, which is essentially, versus against a CPU with these little cutscenes. I didn't bother trying to translate the cutscenes, although somebody on GameFAQs has translated all the cutscenes. If I knew that before I started playing, I probably would have pulled them up, but I didn't do that. But yeah, on GameFAQs, somebody went and translated the entire dialogue sections there, so if you want to follow along. But it seemed pretty like goofy stuff, it's all chibi fun kind of things. There's a lot of like little pieces of arts and set pieces. Well, not a lot of them. It's just basically the end of it, and then there's like these little like character portraits kind of talking, but instead of character portraits, the sprites standing on each side. And so you have that part of it, and then you have the 1-player mode. I personally find the 1-player mode to be the more enjoyable because it is not versus, so you basically just have to break the orbs, but nothing's like, populating on screen. You basically just have to break them within a certain number of turns, because as you're breaking them, depending on how many turns you take, I assume it's not based off time. The top of the board will start to come down. So eventually, if you don't break them fast enough, the very top of the board will be like really close to you. So obviously, if it pushes it down too far, it'll push it off, below you, and then that's the game over state kind of thing. So I personally preferred that mode. It didn't have any story elements to that mode, but they did have unlockable art kind of thing. So there'd be like little, pieces of art you unlock with each board, and then you can go and look at them in an album mode. And then just like, probably about like 9 pieces of art for each character. And there's, I think 9 characters plus 1 bonus character, I believe. So it feels like a kind of like a fan disc in some ways that just kind of like has Bubble Bobble stapled onto it in some ways. So there's actually a bonus CD on there too. I think it's largely promotional stuff for other games, though. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's a 2-disc set. But that second disc, I think, is just largely like, hey, take it and look at the trailer for the next game and things like that. So, I don't really know how much more there is to say about it, though. I think the music's good. I think the art style is nice. The animations are fun. There's voice acting throughout the whole game. And there's like these little set pieces that happen at the end of each character's chapters that I think are really cute. And, I don't know if there's much more to say about that beyond, I assume a lot of people in the world have played Puzzle Bobble. It's just my first time doing it. I guess the one thing I can say, like with Puzzle Bobble, is like a lot of the strategy comes down to like being able to put the orb where you want it to, because when you have the little arrow at the bottom of the screen, you have to kind of like see the trajectory in your mind. And you can play on easier modes where they actually draw out the lines. And when you do that, like it kind of, in some ways, it kind of ruins the challenge, probably. But it is a lot of just like, oh my gosh, is this going to make it? I don't know. This might not make it. And then you shoot, and then like it gets stuck on the side of another orb. And like, god dang it. A lot of that kind of stuff. Although one thing I did not realize is that the L and R buttons in the game actually like slightly adjust your aim. I was using the D-pad the whole time, and it was always overshooting. So yeah, good thing to keep in mind for future Bubble Balls, I assume, is check the L and R buttons to see if they have like incremental adjustments. But yeah, I really don't know if there's much more to say about that, though. I mean, as somebody who has not played Puzzle Bobble, I can't really say much about like if this one differs in any major way. But I think it's a great like way to play this game if you maybe prefer something with a more like 90s anime aesthetic over little dragons throwing orbs to the top of the screen. So yeah, that's. I don't know when I'll play another puzzle game like that. It's pretty rare I play kind of like a falling block puzzle game or something that's like within that style. So I'm glad I did finally sit down and play this one, because I've had it basically since my trip to Japan. I got the whole set for like 100 yen. And I was like, sure, why not? $1 for, essentially this big 2-disc set thing, and it's a puzzle game. Sure, I'll try it. And sure enough, it was probably worth it. Probably worth it. I really enjoyed it. I did stream it a little bit. If you want to go watch me stream it, basically, if you did not know, last week the Napple Tales stream failed yet again. My internet's being spotty. Contacted my ISP. They're gonna, do their whole runaround where they try to blame, every piece of equipment in your path before they ever go look at, anything in terms of wiring. And so, I'm hoping that will be fixed by next week, but I just don't have a lot of confidence. So it might be kind of a crap shot. If we try to stream next week and the internet is still being crappy, I'm just going to record Napple Tale offline initially and then upload it later. I mean, it sucks to have to do that, but, I just want to get moving on Napple Tale. So, but yeah, so basically I waited a couple hours and eventually my internet kind of cleared up. It was still a little choppy at times. It wasn't super bad, but I finished up Psychic Force Puzzle Taisen during that stream. I was planning on doing that anyways, like playing it on my own. So I was just like, no, just turn on the stream. I didn't get the green screen up or anything. I just basically, turned on the gameplay feed and that was it. And a couple people showed up streaming at a different time than usual. So he had some new turnouts, which was kind of fun. So I do sometimes think about moving the stream time back to like 6 o'clock, especially right now, since I don't really have any like need to work within a particular schedule. So I might move it earlier just because it does get late, if I'm starting at 7, that's like 10 o'clock Eastern time, right? So it is pretty late over there. So, I might do that. I know I said that before, but I think last time I was saying it, I was still working with that company, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be okay with me doing that or not. So yeah. But now I'm my own boss for now, at least. So choose my own salary, pay myself however much I want, although I only have so much money in the business bank account. So, so yeah, unfortunately, Napple Tale did not work out. But we'll next week we'll do it, unless some crazy other thing happens. We'll start streaming it. If it fails, I'll go offline and I'll record playing it on my own. And then you'll get to look at me the next day, ramble to myself while I play 2.5 hours of Napple Tale. So, I also got to the post-game dungeons in Crystal Chronicles with my friends recently. So this is my second time playing Crystal Chronicles Remastered. The first time I played with another friend. We got to the post-game dungeons, didn't really mess with them that much. I went back and looked at my footage, and we actually had the soft lock on us on our second dungeon, and I don't think we ever played it again after that. So yeah, we just got to the post game there, and I'm looking forward to it to some degree. Like, I don't really have a lot of confidence that Crystal Chronicles has an interesting post game, especially from what little we've played so far. But I'm willing to kind of put up with it for the most part. Like, it's a fun enough game to just chat and like melee with. It reminds me a lot of like Phantasy Star Online, where like Phantasy Star Online, maybe not the most engaging gameplay experience, but it was like just the right amount for like chatting while doing stuff, right? It was very low stakes, but also the combat was very straightforward, especially in a game that, you didn't have voice chat, you're using keyboard, and a lot of players may not even have a keyboard. I'd say most players probably did not, or they're using an on-screen keyboard instead of the type and things like that. I think the pacing made a lot of sense for Phantasy Star Online, and Crystal Chronicles feels kind of that era of like multiplayer games are simpler in some ways with that stuff. So but yeah, I'm really looking forward to wrapping that up. But the weird problem with it is that like dungeons only unlock on certain days for post game, and they don't randomize. It's the same dungeons each of those days. So it's like Monday they have these dungeons, Tuesdays they have these dungeons. But if you're only playing once a week and like people have schedules and stuff, that's kind of hard. So I think we're gonna try to move it to the weekend at some point, and then try to finish up the dungeons there. Yeah. We'll see. I'm not super excited for it, but I will enjoy it nonetheless. So, so yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of what I played. The Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I lied to you guys. I'm sorry. I did not mean to lie to you. I said last week Xenoblade Chronicles 3 video is not coming out this week. It absolutely did come out that week. So if you did not see, that video is up on the YouTube channel. I was not expecting it to, because the first 4 minutes of the video is pretty intense on the editing, and then the next 4 minutes after that was like somewhat intense, and then the last 4 minutes was actually kind of a breeze, because I was talking about very general, vague things, so I could really kind of drop whatever footage I wanted in without having to think about it, and then it would just kind of come together. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was one of those videos that kind of at the end really moved fast, which is good because that video was something I wanted to get out as soon as possible. There are issues with doing a video like that in the time frame of like a release window. I mean, the same thing with Battle in Wonderworld. There's a lot of things I don't like about the Battle in Wonderworld video, but when I think about how quickly I had to put it together and things like that, and how quickly I got it out, I think it's understandable. And the same thing with this video. I think there are some points in there that I don't particularly excel at making. And I think there are also better ways I could have conveyed certain sets of information. But when you're doing a video like this, you kind of get your first draft, and then that first draft kind of becomes the final draft in a lot of ways. So it's unfortunate that that's how it has to go, but also if you want to try to get in within like a relevant time frame, then there you go. And it's already a month after the game came out, so like obviously I'm already kind of outside that relevant time frame. But it's not like I got a copy early, so I had to play a 100-hour RPG, then write a script, then edit a video together. So I'm happy for what happened and how it came out, and also I think it did a lot for me in terms of better understanding myself when it comes to what I like about Monolith Soft games and thinking about like how each game fits into that. So a good reminder that I need to go back and play games like Soma-Bringer. Soma-Bringer is definitely high on my list of to do, and then also get to Super Robot Taisen Endless Frontier XSeed. I don't know if I'm gonna do Project Cross Zone 2, to be honest with you. It's, from what I read, Project Cross Zone 1 and 2 are nearly identical, just different characters and different, set pieces, and I really do not like Project Cross Zone 1. I like it better than Xenosaga Episode 3, from my memory, I should say, but and revisiting Xenosaga Episode 3, I think my feelings are actually very similar to how I felt back then in terms of like combat. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is kind of but I was really happy to revisit Baten Kaitos though and Xenosaga Episode 2. I think those games play great, and I'm very happy that the combat systems of those games seem to really hold up in a way that I thought they would. So I'm glad I got the chance to revisit that. So thankfully, I was able to use all my own footage. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I only needed one really little bit of cutscene footage, and that game has an event viewer. Though interestingly enough, so the if you didn't see the video, in that video, I make like I don't know if you call it a joke, I don't know, a reference to Xenosaga Episode 3 having Jesus Christ in it, and he shows up in like a scene, like a singular scene. And it's like a big enough meme that Jesus Christ is in Xenosaga Episode 3 that I'm like, I don't really care putting it in there. Although I put it in there, then realized there's like an actual spoiler in that scene. So very last minute, like I like the night before edited it in this thing to cover up the spoiler, but it was actually kind of too big to cover. So I put this big old badge in front of it that's like super, super distracting. So it doesn't look great. But anyways, the point I'm trying to get to though is I've always seen these pictures of Jesus Christ in like very clear view in those like scenes in the game when I look online. But when I loaded up an event viewer, there's like this very intense like bloom filter on it in a way that's like, you know, very intentional to be like, we're obfuscating how things look. And I had never seen it like that before on the internet, at least. I've always seen it in that very, very clear look. And so like, I wonder if it's the like a PS2 effect, whatever, the PS2 emulator that everybody likes to use. I wonder if there's like a lighting issue in that game, or like if breaks the filter, because, you know, unless there's ways to get different versions of that cutscene on the system itself, you know, it was completely different aesthetically. So I was kind of surprised how just different it was on my actual console, at least. So yeah, but all the footage at the end was all mine. So I'm always happy when I can do that without having to pull from somewhere else. You know, I'm a little unhappy with the Xenosaga footage, Episode 1 footage I had to use, but I mostly utilized Episode 2 because the reality is that I wanted to mostly represent games that I personally felt represented my values with Monolith Soft. And Xenosaga Episode 1 definitely does do that, but I feel like Xenosaga Episode 2 is more so, even more so. Because Xenogears is a game that I think, at the time when it came out, at least from a Western perspective, I think the combat system was like really kind of neat. You know, it was more, if you ever played like Final Fantasy 6, there's like these kind of like button combo inputs you can do with, I think his name Sabin or something like that. And it kind of like they took that and so instead of making it like a traditional JRPG, they add like these kind of fighting game inputs onto the combat system. And it's like a really neat way to like handle that in a game. And Xenosaga kind of in some ways builds on top of that, but it is quite a bit different. Maybe, I don't know. It's been a long time. My memory of Xenogears is that it is a lot more focused on that like different button inputs for different combos. Where I feel like Xenosaga is more about like you can connect to different attacks, and then those attacks will like connect into a finisher. So the implementation feels a little different. And you know, I might say I think Gears might feel slightly better based off my memory alone. I have not played Gears recently, but yeah, that's just a thought I had. Brain thought, Benjamin Brain Thoughts. So yeah, but the video thankfully did very well from a view perspective. You know, I'll be honest with you, I have not really had many video wins this year. Nothing I've put out really this year has done very well. So this video did very well. I think the big question here is this an evergreen video, or does this video die when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 gets out of the traditional news cycle here, right? And I think we're at the tail end of that. So, you know, I'm hoping I'll get to like 1,000 before that happens, at least. That's like 750 as I'm talking right now. The big thing I was worried about, though, initially, is the dislikes on it. So obviously you guys can't see the dislikes, or at least you can't without some kind of tool. YouTube removed dislikes, and it was this big conundrum or whatever. I've talked about dislikes on here before, and really, like, to sum up my thoughts on dislikes, I think from a user perspective, dislikes are valuable because it tells you the quality of the content, or at least it gives you a quick judgment. That's not to say it's about the quality per se, because I'll get into that in a little bit. But from a creative perspective, I have a really hard time finding anything valuable from it because it does not give me the feedback I want. It is a blanket no bad video, and it's like, okay, what did you not like? As a variety content creator who makes tons of different types of videos, tons of different types of content, is that a successful model for creating a channel? Whole other thing. But dislikes just don't really tell me a lot. Do you not like the video format? Do you not like my opinion? Do you think the video is poorly produced? Do you think the writing was bad? There's so many different things. And I really wish when they did dislikes, they had like something similar to the reporting system, where there's like a series of check boxes of like general things. I think dislikes could really be improved that way. However, now I'm wondering if dislikes are that valuable for even from like a user perspective, because what my friend told me, because I was a little worried because the video is like at like 45% like, so it got hammered hard. I kind of expected that, to being somewhat negative about a very popular game right now. Some people are just going to be upset to be upset. Although, I don't get any feedback, so who knows? Maybe they have legit criticism and I don't know. Most of what I've heard from comments and things like that seem to be good video, but I disagree with you kind of thing. But I think it's always important to say that, like, in my videos, I'm not necessarily trying to convince you to change to my opinion. But what I want to do is make sure you at least understand where I'm coming from with that. Like, for me, it's success if you come away and say, I understand how you feel. That's my biggest thing. I don't care if you agree with me that much, but I as long as you're like, the pieces you laid out made sense and the argument you made was substantial enough to prove the point that you're trying to make. Obviously we can all feel differently about games. And I think the very big thing with this video in particular was, I have a very specific perspective that I think is very different from a lot of modern Xenoblade fans. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's going to be different, because my values of what that company has excelled at is a little different, I think, than somebody who maybe just came in with like the Xenoblade series specifically, right? So anyways, but yeah, so we got a lot of dislikes, and a friend of mine was telling me, he was like, actually, dislikes are good to get. I was like, what? And it's like, yeah, as long as it drives engagement with your videos, dislikes are good. And then YouTube takes that as like a good thing, and it's like, hey, we'll do more with this video. So that, like, to me, kind of like, in some ways kills the point. Like, you would think it would affect the algorithm, and that, like, you say, okay, this video content is like, it is being reported as bad quality, right? So we would be less likely to share it. But I did some research, and it seems like that's the case. It seems bizarre to me. So I don't know. I don't know why you would do that. And it feels like that would encourage people to make very divisive videos, right? Where it's like, you can't really have something that falls in between as much. You want people to be really, really upset enough that they're going to smack that dislike button, or very, very positive enough that they're going to smack that like button. And I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you. So anyways, I think the big thing is, though, like, I don't blame anybody for giving me dislikes. That's perfectly fine. I think the big thing is that if you do give me dislikes, I will say this: if you could leave a comment, or if you don't want to, like, help the algorithm or whatever, if you don't want to comment, I've seen people like make comments and delete them because, like, I don't want to support the algorithm. Like, all right, that's fine. But just send me a message too. I have plenty of platforms I'm available on. I just like the feedback. I do not get much feedback. So the more feedback I get, the better I am, because I feel like I'm learning something. I mean, I think a lot of the Buddy Mission Bond, sorry, if you're the person who told me this, I kind of hate singling you out in some ways. I don't know, it feels weird sometimes. Although maybe, like, I don't know, who cares? The panel I did on the playing Japanese games without knowing the language, like, some feedback I got on that really changed how I conveyed that information in the Buddy Mission Bond video. So, like, getting feedback can be really helpful for those things, because I think I really did a good job of rounding out the end of that Buddy Mission Bond video in terms of, like, explaining how using machine translation and all those things actually works in a way that I did not do at the panel itself. So, admittedly, the panels are always, like, a little bit more fast and loose, and sometimes I don't necessarily know, how quickly I'll get the chance to actually work on it before it comes up. But anyways, so yeah, it was just kind of a whole thing with the dislikes. But at the end of the day, I think the comments that were on the video were very well thought out generally. So I was very happy to respond to those, and I'm very happy with that. So we'll see. Hopefully it keeps chugging along. I would love to do more Monolith Soft videos in the future, but it'd probably take a lot of work if I'm going to do something a bit more expansive. I may take the approach of, like, breaking it up. one thing I've always wanted to do is go back and revisit Baten Kaito's games and talk about the dungeons in that game. So maybe I could break it up in a way that it wouldn't be as intense on like, we're going to talk about every element of these Monolith Soft games across an entire series, because that'd be a very long video. But if I'm just like, hey, we're just going to talk about dungeons, then maybe that would be better. But anyways, in the short term though, I think Somabringer is definitely a game I want to sit down and play when I get the chance. So it's also worth mentioning here real quick before we move on. Sorry, I know I'm kind of rambling on right now. I did take some time to kind of like make a schedule for the rest of this year, just to kind of figure out, like, with the 2 weeks kind of back and forth between Patreon and the main YouTube channel, it kind of makes it a little easier to plan in a lot of ways, honestly, which is kind of nice. It does kind of limit what I put out as much as though, but I think it's a good limit because I'm less impulsive in the type of content I'm making, I feel like, and doing it this way. And I think making the podcast clips instead of doing full casual reviews for things that don't necessarily need it, I think has been something I'm liking on my side, at least. I don't know, always feel free to give me feedback on how that's working out for you. If you're like, I really hate that you're reposting your podcast clips with footage, then feel free to say what you say. But at least from my side as a creator, it's been helpful, and it gets my thoughts out there without necessarily having to edit this whole video together separately from what I would have probably already just said. Slightly better in a casual review format, but not like that much better. But yeah, I did go ahead and kind of make a schedule for the rest of this year, kind of tried to plan out the videos. So, I've got the Doraemon video that I've talked about before. I need to kind of piece that together. Again, that's not going to be like a premiere video, I think. It is an edited and scripted video. I think I'm largely going to try to stick to scripted videos for those types of videos. I don't think you're going to see nearly like any casual reviews or anything like that as much anymore. But obviously I'm going to have my things where I'm talking at the desk and talking about random garbage as well. So, I think it'll be good to have more scripted content generally, and just trying to be better at like building a script faster. I think that's something I really would like to improve on. And I think the Doraemon video is an example of like, hey, I was able to put this together pretty quick, and I think it's a solid script. I don't think it's like as good as a Buddy Mission Bond or even the Xenoblade video in some ways, but and then got to work on the Chibi Robo stuff still, and a handful of other things. So I got some things laid out. I'm not going to stick to like a hard like I have to have this week kind of thing, but generally just trying to figure out what the rest of my year looks like, because it's coming up at the end of the year. It's September, guys. It's almost the end of 2022. Wow. Congratulations. Welcome to the Patreon. Have you been a Patreon for all 2022? Do you know I launched Patreon in 2022? Anyways, it's Patreon time. Henry Dagger, thank you so much. Paul Daniel, thank you so much. Although I always feel bad, Paul. I have not done any PCFX stuff recently, although Sparkling Feather is on that list of things for the end of this year. For 2 years, we'll talk about Sparkling Feather, so do not trust me, but I am planning on it. It is on the list. It is always on the list, but it is something that is I want to do. I would like to do that before the end of the year, if anything. Jillian, and then also Discreet. So, hey, did you guys know that if you gave $5 to the Patreon, you get bonus videos? This week, Patreon people are getting my Buddy Mission Bond cup unboxing videos. So I bought those 4 Buddy Mission Bond cups. So I unboxed them. And then I also poured soda into them in the color scheme of Buddy Mission Bond. So if you want to see me sit there and like have a hard time pouring soda into some cups and then messing it up and then like guzzling a cup of soda to try to move on with my life, you can watch that there. That is something that I did. Very exciting. And then I'm not sure what comes up after this, honestly. But anyways, there's other bonus content there. Article readings and commentaries on past videos I did and stuff like that. So again, that's at the $5 level if you want to contribute to that. Now, typically, people who get the Patreon also can ask a Patreon question. However, this last week I forgot to post the Patreon question post, I just realized. So I'm sorry. I will try to make sure one goes up this week. So I went ahead and pulled the Jillian question though, per usual on that. And Jillian's question was, what non-dress up games have you enjoyed doing dress up in? So, obviously I'm a fan of games for girls, but how often I play them is a whole other thing. But glamour and like outfit design stuff and is something that has happened in a lot of video games. Is all over the place. If anything, I'd say maybe it became a much bigger part of the industry thanks to things like loot boxes and live games and people being like, yeah, I want to dress up my cat girl and make her look like a sailor this week, and then they pay money to do that, and then they do that on Final Fantasy 14. It's like, yay, my life is complete. So yeah. But in terms of games that stand out to me, I want one thing to loop back to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is not dress up really, but I do really appreciate the different outfit designs in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that change with each class. So basically every time you switch class, you get different outfits, and those outfits generally are thematically the same, but they differ slightly for at least the male versus female characters. I don't remember how it is in terms of like I don't know if like the male designs alter that much, but it was very, very, I think, consistent across the board generally. When it comes to gender, I think that's always something that I appreciate, is when like outfit designs, the original look of them is kind of kept the same. You don't end up with like the lady version having a ton of skin and the guy version being completely covered up. I feel like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did a good job of balancing that and keeping it where like, even though the guys don't have any, well, I guess it depends on what you feel about like man chest and like how bubbly that could be depending on art. I guess like, what's his name? Lands might have a bigger chest than the other men in that game, but like they have like top, like, I guess, I don't know. My brain is serving me the word corset, but it's not like a corset anyways, but like they have pieces that would typically only be like on a lady's like breastplate kind of thing. And they do that for the guys as well, and I kind of appreciate that they like keep that design consistent, personally. So anyways, that's not part of this. I just thought about it as we were talking about it. But anyways, games that I like to dress up in. What is anything recently? I will say Phantasy Star Universe was probably one of the first games I really went out of my way for dress up in. That game has quite a bit of different outfit designs, and so I would try to consistently change my outfits in that game. I like jackets in game, so I would often get all the jackets in the game and just try those things out. But that's kind of like a future sci-fi kind of look, and sometimes like at some point like I will get to the part where I'm like, I've worn all these other outfits and then I'm gonna wear what I consider ugly outfits. But sometimes something looks ugly upon your first impression, but when you find enough pieces that make it work with it, you're like, oh, this actually looks okay. So I kind of like that bit of like trying to make a piece work even if I don't particularly like it. I've tried to do this with like lady characters as well, as I mentioned earlier. So if you don't know, like for me, when it comes to like character designs for men versus women kind of thing, I like novelty, as you may expect listening to this podcast in general. So like the more I see like women that like character design wise that have like a bunch of skin showing, kind of the less I want to see it, and the more I want to see a character that's like more covered up, because I'm like, oh, this actually feels a bit different than like a usual lady character design. And then like for the men, it's vice versa, where it's like men are almost always covered up. So like whenever a man's showing like skin on their thighs or something, I'm like, oh, they did something different. That's neat. So like I kind of appreciate that. So on like the lady side, I kind of don't like skin as much when I make those kind of character designs. However, I like starting with God Eater 2 specifically, there's a lot of just like, outfits that just show off a ton of cleavage or belly stuff, from my memory at least. I don't remember for sure. In my mind, when I started playing a lady in that version of the game, the outfits felt a lot more revealing, at least compared to being a guy. I was really going my way to try like the different like outfits, and like even though this outfit is literally just like a jacket that like barely covers her boobs and then like sways out, so like she's basically bare chested with the jacket on, right? That's just like covering the sensitive areas. That I would try to work with that and try to make something that I was like happy with generally, kind of thing. So God Eater's a big one. And the thing is, like, these are usually long running RPG loot driven games. So like, it's just fun to like, switch it up a bit, I think is generally how I feel. So I will say one thing. I don't know if this really falls within the realm of this question, but I'm going to ramble on anyways. I'm not a huge fan of like MMO endgame armor design. Like, I think of like games like Final Fantasy 14 and like World of Warcraft, and to some extent Final Fantasy 11. I think it's mainly like, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy 11, mainly artifact and relic armor and things like that. Although some of them I think it looks good and stuff though. So I don't know. I kind of feel like MMO armor gets really gaudy at some point, and I don't like it. And it's supposed, I think it's just kind of the kind of constant escalation thing that comes with it, right? We need to kind of one up every piece and then like make everything, that's really high level armor look like high level armor. And I just don't like how it looks usually. So I really prefer more simpler pieces of armor. I really like a lot of the lower level gear in those kind of games. And so I really kind of cherish those. And like, that's kind of one thing I liked about Final Fantasy 14 1.0 is that like everyone has this very like drab gear for the most part. And like, that does not work well in the context of an MMO for most people. There's a lot of things with Final Fantasy 14 1.0 that doesn't work well within the context of an MMO. But I personally appreciate, because I kind of prefer that design in a lot of ways. So, but yeah, I did do a little dress up in Final Fantasy 11. It was pretty minor stuff though. I was not really like super cognizant of it, but again, you spend so much time in a game, you inevitably are like, I don't know, this hat looks all right. I'll put that on my character. And it's like a level 36 hat and I'm level 75. Who cares? I'm just walking around town kind of thing. So, but I mean, glamoury and stuff like that in these games have kind of made it so like, if you want to like dress up your character however you want, you can. I personally try to keep like, new armor on though, when I'm playing a game actively, because like when it's like a aesthetic attached to gear that has like stats to it, right? I like to keep I like to see my armor evolve throughout a game and change and things like that. And I like getting a new piece of armor and then that changes like the aesthetic of it. And I feel like if I glamour my gear so it looks one particular way and just keep it that way, it makes my character design a little stagnant in a lot of ways, and I'm less likely to like kind of play with different design choices and things like that. But I think at that point, you're looking at armor that looks a particular way that you just kind of end up with, and then you end up like being a fashion train wreck, right? So anyways, so I guess really pretty much any action RPG or online MMO or any long-term loot-driven game, I do like doing dress up in. Is there anything else that's like out of the ordinary from that though? I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers my bases there. I'm sure there's something, I mean, obviously there's the actual games for girls stuff, but I assume non-dress up games includes games for girls stuff, so. Anyways, thank you guys again for supporting the Patreon. Thank you again, Jillian, for your question. Like I said, I'll try to get that question post up this week. Again, typically it's Monday at 3 p.m. Sorry I missed it last week. So let me know if you have anything you want to ask. News time. We're here. Two beeps only this week. I feel like I do not like doing the beep, so I just like caught myself and stopped it. And now I could edit that out of the podcast, but you're here with me today, right now, living in this moment. Quick follow-ups here real quick. Penny Blood and Arm Fantasia we talked about last week. These are the JRPGs that were being double kickstarted, and they are spiritual successors to Shadow Hearts and Wild Arms. So the goal of that double Kickstarter, so they combined their money amounts, was $700,000 about. And it has surpassed that. There's still 27 days left as I'm recording this, and I think it's like at 1.1 million, so I assume it's going to go up quite a bit from there. Per usual with Kickstarters, there's stretch goals and things like that. I feel like this is the first time I've seen somebody talk pretty positively about a Kickstarter in a long time. These are games that I think people want, and I think the right people want them, and they have a pretty great appeal. I feel like a lot of these kind of spiritual successor games kind of puttered out in Kickstarter for a while, but maybe it's just been long enough that it's like, hey, we've learned a lot of lessons. Hopefully this works out. I didn't ever look to see why they're doing a double Kickstarter. Maybe it's like something where they're sharing resources between development teams to try to save costs and things like that. I will say, like, even at $1 million, like $500,000 for a JRPG does not seem like a lot. So I have not looked at their stretch goals to see what they're trying to build onto there, but I mean, I kind of assume they have some kind of other funding, to be honest with you, because I think Bloodstain also got $500,000, and I think Ego was upfront, just like, hey, this is not enough money to make a video game, but we have support from other people that if we raise $500,000, it shows that we have this like the interest in the game, and people are legitimately like essentially putting their money where their mouth is, right? So anyway, they have graduated from Kickstarter or RPG ideas to potential RPG games, I guess. They put out full trailers for both Penny Blood and Arm Fantasia. I will say I am not sure these trailers are in-engine. They look very nice. Arm Fantasia looks like it could be believable as gameplay, but Penny Blood specifically, I looked at that and it just looked like the animations were a little too specific to really be believable. There's no exploration in any of those trailers, so, you weren't seeing somebody just controlling the character moving around the world. It was just like, turn-based combat systems, so I think that's something you can easily kind of mock up. So be curious to see what those look like when they become more of actual video games. Maybe they've said that it's just like, mock gameplay with fake UI, but at least so far it looks pretty promising on that. So anyway, well, we'll see what happens. I will probably not play either of them, but, beautiful. I just have not played Wild Arms or Shadow Hearts, so their main appeals have not gotten to me. Although I think Shadow Hearts does weird stuff with its combat system, if I remember correctly. Maybe it's just like Paper Mario-ish with like timing elements. I'm not 100% sure. PSA, Trinity presents NIS Classics Volume 3 is out. You're like, Ben, why are you talking about NIS Volume 3? You haven't even talked about Volume 1 and 2. What are you doing here? This collection includes Rhapsody, a Musical Adventure, which is a game I do like. Maybe not the best video game I've ever played in my life, but it is a very cute game. It's like a little musical RPG with like songs and things like that. This version of the game seems to support both Japanese and English, it seems like, based off the page I was looking at. The game had different musical soundtracks on the PS1 or not on the PS1, but in Japan and the US. So it's very cool to see that come back out. They're actually selling it as a bundle with another game called, I think it's like La Pucelle Ragnarok. I don't know what that is, but it's also a strategy RPG. However, you can buy them separately on Steam if you only want to get one or the other. But on Switch, it looks like they're all bundled together. And there's a physical copy on Switch as well. I think the physical copy on Switch is around $60, where the digital only is like 30 or 40. I think it's 40 actually, because I think they're $20 each on Steam. So it looks like it's the PlayStation 1 version of Rhapsody. So what that means is, if you're not up on your Rhapsody details, is the DS version of that game was altered to be a turn-based RPG. My assumption of why that was the case is because it kind of speeds up the battles in a way, because the game is actually very simple and doesn't have a lot of depth to it. And the original game is a strategy RPG, so you do have to kind of like move your characters across the board and things like that. So it is that strategy RPG game as far as I can tell, although I did not see if there's any way you can like change between the two or something. But from what I saw, just looking at screenshots and videos, that's the only type of gameplay I saw in there. But personally, I love the English version of the musical songs. I played the DS version of the game, which only had the Japanese ones, and I can totally understand why. And, I appreciate that as is, but I personally like the English versions of them. So it's good to see both. Part of me wants to pick it up. But I know I will never play through that game again, unfortunately. So I will get what I need out of Rhapsody Musical Adventure by going on YouTube and looking up Rhapsody Musical Adventure soundtrack. that will get me everything I need for the most part. Very cute game. I really love the ending as well. So I got all teary-eyed at the end of the game. So sad. I was a little sad little boy. So yes. Tokyo Game Show's coming up. I think it's like September 15th, something like that. It's the mid-September. The usual time, so that's pretty neat. Obviously, all these different companies are announcing their showcases. I'm not going to go over everything here. I have a link to the page on the in the podcast notes if you wanted to go look at that. But the things that really jumped out to me is that Square Enix is showing off more Star Ocean stuff and Saga stuff. I don't really have a particular interest in that, but I feel like that rubs up enough against us that I should probably mention that. The things I'm really interested in is that they're going to be showing off some Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. They say Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai special gameplay presentation. So there are multiple Adventure of Dai games that came out. I don't know if they're all published by Square Enix or not. One is made by the Style Savvy developers. And that's the arcade game. And the arcade game looks really cool. I would really like to try the arcade game. And then there's the mobile game as well. And then there was a console one that they announced a while back ago, multiple years back ago. And they showed it off once, and it was kind of like an isometric action game. And then they showed it off again in like a stream, although it was not in like a trailer format. It was just like somebody playing it, and it did not look particularly good. It was like behind the back. It looks like a very generic action kind of game. So if they're showing off the console version of that again, I'm really curious to see what that looks like. This game seems to be going through some development troubles. Those mobile and the what's it called game, the arcade game, have been out a long time at this point. So it seems like a game that probably should have came out a while ago. I don't know if they ever gave an original window with it, but maybe my view of time is distorted at this point, but it feels like it's way overdue. They also have a PC game section. I don't quite know what this is going to be, and it might just be like, oh, we're porting Final Fantasy something to PC. I don't know. Is that Final Fantasy Origins on PC? I don't remember. Maybe something like that. The big thing I'm looking for is to see if First Soldier ends up on PC. It may not even be any announcements. They didn't say that. It just is on their schedule, says PC game something or something or the other. So cross my fingers, First Soldier gets a PC version. I did not see any mention of First Soldier on that schedule, which is worrisome to me. But, I really don't know how well that game is doing at this point. So, and then the other company I want to showcase, although one of these games is not a game from them, Konami. Konami says they have a unannounced title from a world-loved series. I don't quite know what that means. They did list some actor, I think. They're like, oh, he's coming to represent this property. But I went and looked at his history and could not find any Konami games he seemed to be involved in. I could just be wrong. I mean, I didn't go and look at every single one, but I did not immediately see something on the list that was like, oh yeah, that game. So we'll see what that ends up being. Maybe, I would say with most things Konami, probably keep your expectations in check. I saw some Tokadol fans being like, a Tokadol 2, and I was like, The world loved series of a Tokadol 2. There are 2 people within the United States that care about a Tokadol. So we'll see. The other thing, this is actually very exciting. So this is not Konami specifically, but it's going to be in their booth, it sounds like, just as a partner thing, is Magician's Dead's PS4 version is going to be there. I don't think we've heard about that for a long time. So I could be wrong. I don't think there's been any announcements since the initial reveal of it coming. So looking forward to see what that looks like. I might be on board to try Magician's Dead. The problem being, though, is that the main reason I was interested in Magician's Dead was its control scheme in the arcade. And obviously you can't mimic that at home. If you don't know, Magician's Dead's control scheme is basically a Wii-style nunchuck mixed with a Kinect style thing. So you had a nunchuck that you would use to move your character around, and I think there's buttons on it as well. And then you had a bar that you'd put your hand over, and different hand positions would do different things. If you had a fist, if you did a pointer or something, it would do different types of moves. And then that also is how you aim. So, in going to a PlayStation 4 controller, I really can't imagine it's going to be that interesting. It probably will play a lot like those typical arena style kind of games. So, but we'll see. I'm slightly interested, if only from that. There was so I don't know if I'm interested in this yet or not, but it's generically announced enough that it might be something that I'm interested in. We'll see. I need to see some gameplay. Miraculous Ladybug, an action adventure game for the Switch. I forget what the full name is. Rise of the Sphinx. They announced this for the Switch. I don't remember when it was coming out. They had a trailer, but it was basically just, showing off the game and engine or the in-game graphics. I don't know if it's necessarily running off a Switch directly. But it looks okay visually. I think it holds up pretty well for what the Switch can do. But I read the press release and it didn't sound very interesting. It sounded like it probably is just going to be kind of a traditional beat 'em up game. The developer on board I didn't recognize either. So I'll keep an open mind. I don't know if love is the right word. I really enjoy DC superhero girls a lot. So I definitely have space open for this. I liked season 1 of Miraculous Ladybug. That's not saying that the later seasons were not as good. I just, kind of watched it for that first season, and then I kind of fell off after that because I don't typically watch shows like that very long. So I really enjoyed it though. I had an awkward moment at I think it was, where was it? Level Up Expo here in town. They have booths where voice actors are, but there's usually there's a section where all the voice actors are at. But then sometimes they'll be mixed into the vendor space as well. And so I walked into this one lady's booth and it was clear she was a voice actor. And one of the things I saw, the only thing I recognized is Miraculous Ladybug, and the thing is oh, Miraculous Ladybug, who'd you voice in there? She said a character's name, and I was like, oh, I have no idea who you're talking about. And she's like, oh yeah, here's a picture. And I was like, oh, that's after season 1. I've never seen it. And it was the most awkward, okay, thank you, bye. I didn't have anything to say. Don't know who you are. So it was kind of funny, but It was an interesting little experience there. But yeah, I'll be curious to see what that turns out to be when that happens. XSeed is picking up Trinity Trigger. This is a top-down, I think a Furyu game, if I recall correctly. It looked like the developers of Alliance Alive, but I think in looking into it, it is not that team, but I think it is Furyu as the publisher. But anyways, Trinity Trigger is being picked up by XSeed. It's like an isometric kind of dungeon crawler kind of thing. I was interested in this game if I could play it with like other people through multiplayer. However, in the press release, they said it is local multiplayer only, which I'm sure is probably true of the Japanese release of the game as well. I just never looked into it. So that's unfortunate because I think the multiplayer is the only way I would have really gotten into that. And unfortunately, I do not have any local friends that I would play with. So rest in peace. So there's that thing coming out in 2023. So look forward to that if you're looking for a multiplayer local RPG. And then for old games, Trip World got trademarked. If you don't know what Trip World did, this is a Sunsoft game. So Sunsoft putting this out. I think Sunsoft is saying they're announcing a bunch of stuff this month. I think we might be getting towards the end of that. I feel like they've had a few weeks of announcements now. But Trip World was trademarked though, so they have not officially announced this if this is the case. And this is a Game Boy platformer featuring a bunny. And, as a Game Boy game, it's pretty straightforward and simple. It is kind of like the Kirby situation where it's all just like white. So the bunny is just a white bunny, right? But that bunny can like roll into a ball and bounce around the stage. I always thought it looked really cool, but the game was always way too expensive for me to get. I got in way too late on finding out about it. I can't remember if I learned about it through a Jeremy Parrish video or if that was something I saw a lot later on after I had found out about it. But always looks really cute. I might consider picking that up. We'll see. I like Game Boy games because they're just like nice little bite-sized things you can just sit down and play. Usually, not always. It depends on how hard they are. But I think if I recall correctly, I think Trip World is a very like straightforward game in a lot of ways. So it should be like hey, sit down for like a couple hours and be done. I don't know if it has battery backup saves either, so it might also be kind of intended to be beat in a single sitting in a very like Super Mario Brothers 1 kind of way, or Super Mario Land 1 kind of way. And then there was some more X68000 teasings from Zuiki. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. They showed off a mouse and keyboard that was like molded with the X68000 style, and sitting beside it, there was a little tiny X68000. If you don't know what this is a Japanese PC. Very, I think, popular because it was used to develop games at the time. I think like Street Fighter 2 was kind of famously developed on these machines, if I recall correctly. And they're powerhouse PCs, amazing looking games on them. So the collector market there is very, very specific and very expensive, I think. And like, getting a PC up and running is a whole other thing. I can say with experience as a PC98 owner that getting that stuff up and running is very, 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 very exciting. Anyways, so they showed off this little system, and then 4Gamer had put up like a speculation piece of like maybe it's like a mini X68000 that's like an actual one you can use. And then Zuiki retweeted that post. So I don't know if it was a promotional post or something like that, but they retweeted it seemingly to confirm that is going to be, but they have not necessarily said that's the case yet. And they posted another X68000 picture. I think that I actually saw this before last week's podcast, but I did not really dig into it too much. But there's an integrated handle on top, which apparently is something that was in the original one. So it's a portable system, just like the GameCube, a portable PC. It's just the size of like a giant desktop, but you can pick it up with a handle if you want. Anyway, so they're showing off that the little tiny handle was on that little tiny thing, but they did not say any details about whether it was an actual mini console or not. But one thing that 4Gamer pointed out, through machine translation, I should specify, is that the floppy disk drives or floppy disk slots on the mini PC have smaller slots in the middle. So it looks like you can probably put like an SD card in there or something, some kind of flash memory. So it looks probably, and the fact that Zuiki even retweeted this thing in the first place seems very likely it's going to be an X68000 mini. How many of those things get made is a whole other thing. I remember I think it was like HAL made like their own PC98 mini kind of system once, and then I think they made like some ridiculously small number of units and then left it at that. And I think even like Sega has been struggling with the Genesis Mini 2 and getting enough of those units, so like who can really say? But yeah, that's a cute little thing. I'd be curious to see how much it costs. I will never own an X68000, so that might be something that like, hey, if this is kind of like officially condoned emulation of like these should be generally how they are, I guess in some ways that might be useful to me, kind of thing. But again, it depends on how much it costs. and how available they are. I would not be surprised if it's like a lottery thing where you have to just submit and then get pulled out as being possible to buy it. That's a very Japanese thing to do with these kind of things, I feel like. So anyways, excited to see what that turns out to be. Hopefully it turns out to be something that is like fairly easy to buy, at least initially, at launch. So, but that's it. That's it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. Like I said, if you did not see the Xenoblade 3 video last week, that is up now, so go check that out. I have the Buddy Mission Bond Cup video coming up on the Patreon, so if you want to pay $5 a month, you get those 2 bonus videos a month, basically, is what it turns out to be. It's every 2 weeks there's a bonus video kind of thing. So that's going to be there if you want to check that out. I need to update the Patreon page on the One Controller Port website to put all the free content on one page. I haven't done that yet. I need to do that. But I think I went and backfilled all the Patreon content on the website, so you should be able to find all that stuff on the website now if you look for it, but it just links you off to the Patreon, so better just go to the Patreon to find that stuff. Anyways, so there's that. In terms of things that I plan to do here in the near future, the Doraemon video I think I'm going to put together. I think I'm going to be revisiting the Wii commercial video thing for the Patreon. Probably going to put some kind of Kaminazo gameplay up sometime soon-ish. I also am debating going and like revisiting my Monolith Soft ranked video, like the rankings of those games, as I've kind of revisited those games slightly at this point, and also because Xenoblade Chronicles 3 needs to be on there. Unfortunately, the preset templates out there, the preset template I used before does not include all the Monolith Soft games on there. I didn't realize. So there's Soma Bringers missing from it. No, Soma Bringers on there. Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans was missing on there. Xenosaga 1 and 2 DS was missing on there. Things like that. So I might make my own because none of them have Xenoblade Chronicles 3 on there yet, and I would like to rank that as well. So you might get one of those videos. If I do that, that'll probably be soon. So that might be like the next, like, quote, minor major content, right? Like the non-Patreon minor content of me just talking in front of a microphone. So yeah. And then we'll try Napple Tale again next week, and hopefully that'll work out. Hey, if you're listening to this podcast through your ears and you want to see my face, I got a beautiful backdrop today where like a lady's mixing drinks. I got this dude playing with some puppets. I think the girl in Rhapsody Musical Adventure is a puppeteer, if I recall correctly. I think all her things are puppets, and she's got a castle in the background. I guess he should probably be a lady, but whatever. Who cares? We got a lady here already, we got a guy here. Works out. They're there. So anyway, so they're hanging out there. But if you want to look at that backdrop while I talk at your face, there's a YouTube version of this podcast. The podcast gets unlisted after the week, though, but the playlist is always there if you want to go back and rewatch any of those. And then if you are watching this on YouTube and you're like, I really don't need to see your face and I really don't need to look at your little backdrop here for a whole hour, there's a audio version of this podcast on most podcast platforms if you want to go check that out. So feel free to go to that. Otherwise, I think that's going to be it for now. Again, I'll try again for the Napple Tale stream this week, and we'll see what happens. I'll update you if that doesn't, and then I probably will just do an offline recording if it doesn't work out. So, unfortunate, don't like doing that, but that is life. Life gives you lemons. You make fake streams, fake pre-recorded streams. So yeah. Anyways, that's it. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.